Everyone, this is Hope from Pros Before Bros, and I'm hoping to God I don't cough anymore during this video. I made a video prior to this and I went into a huge coughing attack. It sounded like I had smoker's lung, so obviously I wasn't going to put that up because I sounded like shit. Excuse the language, but it's the truth. It was horrible. So I decided I was going to just redo this video. I am currently uploading a video on the After series by Anna Todd, so definitely check that out when you get an opportunity. I talk about my reactions to the Anna Todd series of After and my thoughts on it. So there's that. Now, I am actually doing something a little different today. I'm talking about Booktube. I'm not necessarily talking about books. Oh, I guess I kind of am. But I am going to be talking about a hot button topic here on Booktube, if I could get the words out, and that is consumerism and Booktube. Particularly, can I afford to be a Booktuber? And the answer is yes. I am living proof of that, and I'm going to tell you about my personal experiences and some tips and tricks on how to survive the world of Booktube on a budget, if you will, or if you don't have a budget, we can talk about that too. So first and foremost, I started Booktube, I think it was either June or July of this year. So I decided I was going to do Booktube after a couple years of him hauling around about it because I wasn't sure if I could afford Booktube. I was one of those people that thought you had to have money in order to have a channel of any sort on YouTube, let alone Booktube. And I was sorely mistaken. And the reason why I ended up taking the plunge is because my husband had told me when I brought up these concerns, just to go for it. And he was like, it shouldn't matter about what the newest book is out there and whether it's in your hands or not. It should be just simply the fact that you love doing Booktube, that you love to read, that you want to express that love and share that love with other people like you. So that really impacted me. That made me think about my passion, about loving books and wanting to share that love with other people. I have been a resident here of Cincinnati for about 5 years, and it was a huge plunge for me to move. I moved from a very small farming community in the middle of nowhere that literally had 2 stoplights, and I moved to metropolitan Cincinnati, and it was a culture shock. And one thing that I always said to my husband is I knew immediately how my grandmother felt because she lived in Tokyo, Japan. She came to Ohio, a very small farming community, just like I was, and it was culture shock for her. It was definitely a change. And I always used to joke around with him that that's how I felt at times. So it was hard for me to get out there and express myself. In addition to having anxiety, it was damn near impossible. So Booktube was my outlet to the outside world, to introduce myself to other people that are like me, that was within my comfort level. It didn't mean I would have to step out of my house to go meet somebody. I didn't have to go to, like, what is it called, happy hour or any of that shit. I could actually just get in front of my phone and talk to people that are in the same that are around the world and have the same taste as I do. So that's why I'm here. But like I said, the main reason why I was so hesitant about joining Booktube is because I was scared to death of the cost. I was under the notion that you had to have expensive equipment to have a YouTube channel. I was under the notion that in order for me to stay fresh, I had to have the newest and latest books in my hands. And I feel like sometimes as a community, our viewers might feel the same way, that they have to have all this expensive material, they have to have access to funds to pay for books. That's not entirely the case. I know that there's times I do book hauls and it appears that I am spending a ridiculous amount of money. But in reality, that's usually not the case at all. I try very hard not to spend too much money on things or find alternatives. So I'm here to talk to you guys about that, especially to you people that are on the fence about joining Booktube. There are quite a few people that are on the fence, and it seems like it's a growing pattern in the comments I read, not only on my channel but other channels as well. And I feel so disheartened for those people because I feel like they have such great potential. And there's a couple people that have consistently talked or commented on my channel that I feel would be perfect booktubers, and I don't know what the situation is with them, but if it's financial, I want to give somebody a peace of mind and say, hey, you don't have to worry about that. So yeah, let's just go ahead and jump into it. So some of the books, some of the ways that I obtain books personally, excuse me, I knew I was going to cough. There's a couple different ways that I get my books, and a couple things that I do to keep down those costs. So with my books, a majority of them are used books. I like to go to used bookstores quite a bit and utilize them. A lot of used bookstores in my area, Cincinnati, are locally ran. So I really, if you guys watch any of my videos about like the bookstores I like to go to, most of them are local bookstores that aren't trying to keep up corporate numbers or anything. So I usually go to those to save wherever I can. There's a particular bookstore that I really enjoy, and that is the Murphy's Used Bookstore up in Kettering. And most of their books range between $1 to $5. Actually, all of them range between that. In addition, the owner is really sweet, and he tries to find ways to get books in people's hands that might not necessarily have access to books. So he does first-time customers, you could come in and get a free book. Or during the holiday, he'll have a special where you could get a free book at his store. That way you don't walk home empty-handed. He's very grassroots, and that's something that I really enjoy. So I utilize his store quite a bit, not only because the prices excuse me, oh my god. Okay, where was I? The prices are fairly reasonable. He doesn't overcharge, and he tries to find ways to give you a discount. So I do that. I also do a lot of buybacks. So with buybacks, I usually go to Murphy's again, but if you don't have a Murphy's, you can always go to Half Price Books. Second and Charles is a really great bookstore. I think they might be semi-national. I believe that they are on the East Coast and the Midwest. They do buybacks. They're really gracious with their buybacks. I've never had problems with them. But ultimately, I go to places like them and kind of compromise. I'll exchange books with them. So once I'm done with a book and I don't feel the absolute compel to keep those books inside my collection, I usually bag them up, or I box them up and take them into a bookstore such as Second and Charles or Murphy's and get the store credit so I could continue to read other books. That's one thing that I really appreciate and I recommend to everybody. In addition, if you haven't gotten a hint already, I love coupons. I will sign up for coupons. That way I can have access to some good discounts. I have signed up for the book. Oh gosh, I always mess this up. The Book Outlet, which is an online bookstore, but I believe they have a bookstore in their hometown. I want to say it's Pennsylvania, if I remember correctly. They have some great deals, and they discount pretty much a lot of books, and some of them are fairly new to the market. You just have to watch out. So I always recommend signing up for their newsletter, and I believe with their newsletter you get a first-time coupon. But recently they had 30% off their entire order for Black Friday, which can definitely help with your costs as well. Barnes & Noble, I know that they can be expensive, and I think they're trying to move away from that standard big box concept that they had, where everything is retail price, due to the fact that they are having issues keeping their stores open and keeping the stocks, because the stocks have been just dropping like crazy with them. I think what they're trying to do is peak interest again. So they've been doing a lot of coupons for Cyber Monday. They also did some coupons for Black Friday, but often they are doing other coupons in addition to their memberships to get people in the doors. So for their recent, I believe they had 50% off of their YA books and a few other genres as well. So they're trying their best to meet their customer demographic that way. They can essentially keep their doors open. So definitely utilize coupons. Those are some big factors there. And don't be worried about, going in to a local bookstore and seeing what kind of discounts it could possibly give you. Definitely don't take advantage of them. That's not what I'm trying to convey. But one thing as a booktuber that I have been trying to do is establish a relationship with my local bookstores. That way I could help them get some business, but also maybe get a little bit of business for myself where I can get discounts, or maybe an opportunity to, there's new releases a little bit ahead of time before anybody else. I guess not like a day or two. That would be like an R copy, but just make sure I get first dibs, I guess, when that stock comes in. So one thing that I could recommend as a booktuber to kind of show your support, and maybe also work to your advantage where the bookstore will give you like a discount or anything like that, is to talk to your local bookstore owner and see how they would feel about possibly being a sponsor. So I'm going to use this example. One of the channels that I used to watch quite a bit, I don't think they are still around anymore. They used to have a sponsorship with their local comic book store. So they would work with their comic book store, have a sponsored video at the bookstore every Tuesday, and they would talk about the comics, the stock that they came in with, any new stock, and also give reviews. And that actually helped. Not only them, they were able to get a discounted rate on some of their things, but that also grew interest within the community, and several viewers started coming to that bookstore, and that honestly raised their profit. It was a really great move for both the bookstore and the booktuber at that time. And it doesn't have to be an everyday thing. It could be simply an introduction, where you go in and do a walkthrough of the store and just get the store's name out there. So that's something I recommend. But most importantly, if you can't afford any books, I can't stress this to you enough. Utilize your library. Your library is such a great place to start. And this is me speaking as a former librarian myself, and just as a patron of a library. I can't recommend how often, I can't recommend them enough. I will use this as an example. In Cincinnati, the public library here, they are always on top of their game. They always make sure that they have new releases, and they keep their stock pretty fresh. So just as an example off the top of my head, there's a book that I was dying to read, but I didn't want to pay $20 for it because it's no by November for Hope. It was, let's see, We Sold Our Souls by Grady Hendrix. Very popular book right now. A lot of people have been reading it. And I, again, was hesitant about buying it because I'm trying to save money. The library actually had a copy, and they were able to put it on hold for me so I could utilize it. Sometimes that's not very easy. If it's a new release, it's obviously going to be off the shelves quite a bit. It'll be flying off the shelf, and you might have to be on a hold period. In a case like that, don't discredit your audio books or your ebooks. Libraries are trying to integrate as much new technology as possible at this point to keep the interest of the library in a peak. So I had recently discovered an app, and it's called Libby. That's Libby. I stop and think about it in my head. And they have ebooks, they have audiobooks, they work with your local library, and it works just like if you were to go inside the library itself and pull these books off the shelves. It's really neat. It's really cool. There is times where some of the most anticipated reads are on hold, and I'm not sure how the demographics work for that, but you usually get the stuff pretty quick. The turnaround time, I believe, is 14 days. And of course, sometimes it's a lot faster. If you're doing an audiobook, it usually takes me about 3 days to get through an audiobook, depending on my work schedule. So I've been utilizing that. That has helped quite a bit. And yeah, I can't recommend the library enough. So definitely utilize that. In terms of the other things, like the technical things, some people are held up on the fact that they feel like they have to have the technical equipment, like the big ring lights and a nice camera like a GoPro or anything like that. I don't think that's the case. I will tell you right now, I film all my videos on my Samsung phone, and it's like, I don't know, a J7 or something. My husband's the one that does the technical stuff, so I don't know. I just let him pick the phone and call it a day. But it's really user-friendly. It's easy to use. And it's inexpensive. I don't have to worry about filming on high-tech equipment. The only thing that you worry about is lighting. But right now, I feel like my lighting's pretty good. And I'm just using standard ceiling lighting. Nothing special. I feel like the message that you come across, that you get out there, is just more than enough. And let's see, what was that? Oh, so I'm going to tell you guys about. I can't talk. I feel like I'm being rattled. I need to get some sleep, obviously. But you shouldn't have that hang up about backdrops or anything like that. As you could tell, my backdrop is pretty simple. It's my second bedroom. It's the window and my bookshelf. That's about it. I try not to make it fancy, just because I just don't want to deal with the maintenance. In terms of editing, I don't have much to offer in that because I don't edit. I don't know anything about editing tools. I've tried. It just confuses me. So this is pretty much what I do. So I can't be an expert on that, but there are people out there, other booktubers, that might be able to help if you simply ask. And I've met so many wonderful booktubers by asking questions such as this. One question that I asked, and I'm going to use as an example in this, is book hauls. My biggest thing, and I think my biggest fear when I wanted to start Booktube, is, do I have to do book hauls? As you guys could tell, I have done some book hauls, but a lot of people do them like every week. I actually talked to a couple of different people about their book hauls because I was just wondering, how the hell do you afford all this? And they told me some of their tips and tricks. They mentioned that they sometimes have ARC copies. Most of the times it could be PR, where the publishing house sends books to you just to kind of get the hype up. That way you can get a review out. And then, of course, it's easy stuff such as going to Book Outlet and buying books on their big sale, or going to a used bookstore or even a thrift store. Thrift stores have some amazing books sometimes. So don't get intimidated thinking that you have to pay full price for a book. That shouldn't be the concern. And then, of course, the only piece of advice I have is just enjoy Booktube. If you are on the fence about it because you're worried that you're not going to have enough content because you can't afford books, that's not the reason why you shouldn't start Booktube. You essentially start Booktube because you love books. And my husband made that very clear to me too. It should be about passion. Majority of the books I read aren't new editions at all. They are fairly old. Sometimes, I think the last book that I did a review on, the Jane book by April Lindner, was a book that was like 6 years old. And I talked about Jane Eyre while I was doing that. Clearly, that's an old book too. So it doesn't have to necessarily be brand new releases. Definitely get out of your comfort zone a little bit and look into your classics. There is quite a few booktubers, and I wish I could remember this booktuber's name. She has some amazing content. She talks about nothing but classics. She'll have a show that's exclusively about classics and her reading them for the month and how she felt about them. And even though some of the books that she has read are like 200 years old or 150 years old, she still keeps it fresh. She brings such good insight. You can do the same thing. You don't have to be hung up on the new books. As long as your content is amazing and compelling and interesting, people are going to want to watch you. So I hope that gives people a little bit of insight on Booktube, and gives you an idea if you're really wanting to do Booktube, but you've been on the fence because of the costs. I hope that gives you the courage to step away from that and go ahead and pursue Booktube and try your take on it and see where it takes you. Don't get hung up on the little stuff. So yeah, that is the video I've been wanting to do all month, but I haven't had time to do so until now. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and comments below. If you have questions about how I came to this point with my own Booktube, please feel free to share those too. Otherwise, thank you so much for tuning in. It's always a pleasure, and good night. Bye.